If you feel a deep calling but are absolutely terrified to switch careers, make a change, this is for you.
I think the spirit of an artist, I think it's a calling, really.
Mark Shiiba was working on a nuclear reactor aboard an aircraft carrier when he made the bold decision to leave the Navy and share his music with the world.
I think everybody on a certain level holds a belief someday someone out there is going to find you. The work is always in front of you, and the only thing that's preventing you from not doing it is you.
I discovered him from season 26 of The Voice, loved his freaking music, and noted he had an old soul. So I had to bring him on to talk all things spirituality, creativity, and making a bold freaking choice to lean all the way in. Several weeks ago, you made a post and you were talking about your time in the Navy and you leaving security, leaving this beaten path, and most folks thinking, what are you doing? Because you left it all behind to pursue music. But I love what you said. It says, but what people forget is that when you have a calling and you follow it, it brings a certain peace to your life that is priceless. I have a similar story. I wasn't in the Navy and I don't do music, but I left security to run after something, and it sounds sexy, but in reality, it is so hard and so scary. Yeah. And I still question myself years later, sometimes like, what are you doing, Heather? Parody. But I wanted to start there with you, bring us back to that dude on a ship. And I'm assuming you had a guitar with you then, maybe, I don't know. And just the point where you were like, F it, I'm going all in.
I had an interesting and I think pretty valuable experience in the fact that I was committed to a certain amount of time in the Navy, so I didn't really have the option of, leaving, putting my 2 weeks notice. I was committed to 6 years in the Navy after I graduated from the Naval Academy, so the option, like the choice of leaving, was never there for 6 years, which is a pretty long time to be committed to something as you're becoming a man, growing up from 21, or I was like 21 to 28 or something like that. So yeah, it's kind of pretty important years in your life, and to have that commitment on one end is a huge challenge in terms of discovering what my path was supposed to be. It kind of allowed me to excavate the my kind of inner knowing about what my calling was, and what it meant to be an artist, and have conviction towards that path. So it was a ongoing process that by the time I had gotten out, even though it was definitely still kind of staring into the unknown, I didn't really know what pursuing a life of being a singer-songwriter would actually look like. But the feeling and the knowing that it was something I was supposed to do was like I was all in. It doesn't make it any less scary, I guess, but it didn't make the decision. It did make the decision easy, really. And so there was a lot of, I think there was a lot of value looking back about just having so much time to process and self-discover, especially because I didn't have anybody in my life growing up that did what I do now, and so there wasn't really any examples for me to point at and go, hey, well, I feel something in me, and now I see it in somebody else that I know I can talk to and can lead me. And so everything that brought me to this path, not everything, but a lot of it was a process of discovery and experimentation, and kind of just feeling my way forward enough to then get to a point when I was 28 years old, I guess, and going, this is the only thing I think I can do. That would make sense and bring that amount of that piece that you were talking about earlier.
How come you went into the Navy instead of going into music at 21? What's the story there?
Yeah, so actually, it was actually earlier. The decision was much earlier. I was a junior in high school, and it's crazy. Sometimes I think about that decision, and it's like, wow, I was a kid making the decision, and fast forward 10 years, I was in a control room in a nuclear reactor, and I was supervising the the operation of a nuclear reactor on an aircraft carrier, and thinking back to
Jesus.
my high school self, going, yeah, I made that decision 10 years ago when I was all I cared about was soccer. And it's honestly for me a reflection on how we make decisions, and then those decisions have domino effects that we'll never
Yeah.
fully
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
And we make the things we make decisions on in the moment, they're sometimes they're so unrelated to where they lead you in life. And it's a bit of a mysterious and beautiful and sometimes scary thing if you think about it, but um, it's sometimes better not to think about.
Yeah.
But in my circumstance, the dominoes effects were started because I grew up in a family that loved sports, like big sports family. 5 kids, 4 boys, one girl, and we just loved soccer, and it was a pretty competitive household of boys trying to do their best on a soccer field. And
Where
um,
was this? What state?
I grew up in a little town outside of Philadelphia,
Okay.
a little town called
Okay.
Swarthmore. It's a little college town. And yeah, it was just me and my brothers just tried to be the best soccer players we could be. And there, looking back to, I think there's the the through line that I've been able to uh, kind of understand between this like deep passion for trying to to excel in soccer, and then where I'm at now in my life, I think is because a lot of people ask me that, like, if I'm a competitive person, because I played Division 1 soccer and grew up in pretty competitive
Hmm.
athletic circles. And the thing that I think I've landed on is that just I love the art of self mastery. I think I found that at an early age in soccer, and I was able to excel in certain levels. And as a kid,
Hmm.
it's a bit of a cheat code when you're going through some of those like very strange, awkward social dynamics of like high school and middle school and stuff. And if you're like, if you're good at sports, it kind of is like a free
Hmm.
pass. And so it was a very useful thing to excel at as a kid. But yeah, there was a lot of external dynamics that were kind of creating an environment that really created an environment where I was really striving to be the best soccer player that I could be. And it was awesome. I mean, I love soccer even today, and I love sports and moving my body. But there was always a feeling that I was like a little bit different, and I couldn't put my finger on it for a longest time. And just because I didn't really know any other artists, yeah, it took me a long time to kind of just land on that thing that was a little bit different was just, I think, the spirit of an artist. And I think it's a calling, really. I don't, because I didn't really do anything. I didn't really seek it out. It kind of just like unfolded in a way that was, I couldn't avoid. It's a very strange thing for me to be doing this with my life. I think about it all the time. There's nothing in my life that would have like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But the only thing that I know through my whole life is the through line is this feeling of like, well, there's something a little bit different about me, the
Hmm.
way that I like see the world and feel about things, and have this urge to express them in songs and in other ways. And yeah, when I picked up the guitar at a very early, like I guess middle school, I felt a little late then. It was like I learned how to play a couple chords, and then immediately I just started writing songs, and it hasn't stopped since then. And so it took me a while to convince myself that was just a part of who I am.
The first thing you said was self mastery. And I thought that was interesting because I don't know. And again, this is just Heather. Maybe you haven't experienced this, but I'm a creative at heart. I've come kicking and screaming to that conclusion. Um, but I've always moved through the world, whether it was through a kind of coping mechanism or whatever, just the way that I had to move in the world was I'm so disciplined.
Mm-hmm.
Like the self mastery thing is
Mm-hmm.
it's seductive to me because I
Yeah,
like it's the thing that's like, okay, well, you can go from nothing to something. And that,
yeah,
I guess it's an American love affair we have with that. But also, too, I think that's been the thing that has crippled me the most in my creative work, because I'm trying to find the balance with self mastery and discipline, and then also flow and um, being honest with what I'm trying to do, as opposed to just always having to produce, produce, produce. And I've struggled with that. And so when you said
Yeah.
self mastery, I'm curious how you have tempered both of those worlds.
Oh yeah. Oh man, yeah. What a great question. I love that question.
Let's go.
I actually watched when you sent me when you reached out to me. I went and listened to one of your podcasts in it, and I don't know. I guess the first one that came up or something was um, with a guy who I forget his name right now, which I apologize for, but I guess he had written the Dark Side of Discipline or something about Dark Side of Discipline, and yeah, I love that. I think everything's a balance, and so um, for everybody where they need to walk either closer to one side to the or to the other is a very specific, a very specific thing. For me, it's trying to find the structure for me to operate within to do
Mm-hmm.
accomplish what I want to accomplish, and the creation of those structures is for me something I'm wrestling with right now. And one of the things I've found is this silly little cube thing. Have you seen these?
No.
These little time cubes. There is literally just a timer, but it has numbers on different things that you and you like move it up and down, and it clicks and it sets you a 30-minute timer. And for me, that was something that was has been really revolutionary with just a little tool that I use throughout the day because if you're a self-employed entrepreneur artist, you have no bosses. You're your own boss, and
Yep. Yep.
separating the boss mentality and the employee mentality in the same person. I
Yep.
mean, you could almost go insane trying to even just manage that. To be honest, not finding ways to have those to exist in a harmonious way creates a lot of, for me, and I think probably for a lot of people, just anxiety because
Yeah.
it's a feeling of like I'm never doing what I'm supposed to be doing right now. There's something else I should be doing that's more important, or I should be. Yeah, it's not. It's you could go weeks, months, probably even years with this feeling that I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing in the
Yep.
moment and never being fully present and like convicted that where I am now, where my attention is right now, is 100% where it's supposed to be. It's a bit of a reasonable thought when you're an entrepreneur and you're managing like six different departments and need to keep them all afloat and you're always trying to figure out what to prioritize and where to spend your time all the time. And it's a bonkers, it's a crazy thing. I was this is a bit of a tangent, so this is a bit of scatterbrain. But when I was in the Navy, I was working on nuclear reactors, and uh, when I would say, oh, I'm a supervisor in a nuclear power plant, people would go, oh, wow, that's really impressive, probably really challenging. You have to be really smart and do all these, just the general sense of like, oh, that's impressive. But when I say that I'm an independent artist, you don't get the same amount of like, wow,
Mm.
that's really impressive. Like it requires an incredible amount of um, skill and thoughtfulness and tact and strategizing and execution. And
Mm.
it's just funny, but because living through both of those experiences now is like being an independent artist, an entrepreneur, and an artist and a creative at the
Yeah.
same time in parallel is borderline insane.
Right.
You got to be
Right.
an absolute master of 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 yourself in many different fields in order to pull it off. And it's like I've become very humbled and have developed, I think, a very deep respect for people who are able to do it in a very skillful and beautiful way. And
You make such a good point. I've never thought about it, but you're right about the responses we get as artists and creatives versus other fields. And so when you're trying to manage figuring it the hell out what's going on and what you need to do next, there's also to this maybe insecurity or weirdness of like dealing with people's perceptions, you
totally,
know.
yeah,
Um
totally. And
and,
there's a bit of a maybe there's a sorry, I think
no, go.
it feels like you might relate to this that there's a bit of a feeling that like there's a certain timeline that is kind of like
Yes.
created in your head where you're like, I need to create the perception of success at a certain point fast. Otherwise,
Yep.
the people in my life will start to go, "Hey, buddy, I think that it's time to give it up. This fun little thing you did because it's not successful.
I
Maybe
know.
you should go back to doing something that is more reasonable." And so I think all creatives probably are fighting that timeline in their head to keep everybody, yeah, keep everybody happy. and
Yeah.
it's a bit of a shallow thing, but um, I think it is probably, I would bet, because I experience it, and it's probably something that a lot of people have to contend with, which is no small thing as you're trying to keep the ship afloat, and do all the things. And
I could really relate to not having an example of somebody doing what you want to do in your life. I mean, I grew up in Arkansas and was homeschooled my whole life. And
oh no way, I
so,
was homeschooled too.
come on, dude.
No,
That's
I
awesome.
liked you.
Let's
No, I
go.
liked you.
That's it. That's it. So I mean, I still go home and people are like, every Christmas they ask me, what can you explain to me again what you do? And I explain it every year. And every
Yeah,
year they do not remember or
yeah,
understand. So I feel you
yeah,
with that. I think what's been hard for me is trying to figure out, when you have an open road, which, freedom is so attractive, like just being able to do what the hell you want to do and just being honest of this is who I am. And it's great. But it's such an open road can also be overwhelming because you don't know which way to go and you don't
yeah,
have a boss and you don't have a mentor and you're having to learn the business side to the thing you really love and figure out how to navigate the conventional path, which by the way is changing for all creatives, not just the music industry, because now where agents and managers and this and that and this and that worked, it's shifting. And so you're coming in to an industry that is getting turned upside down and you're figuring it out on your own. This is a messy question, but
yeah.
what have you, I guess, what was the first few steps you took when you metaphorically got off that boat and started down this road? And how have you been able to navigate the right choices to move the needle? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. Man, my road since getting out of the Navy and doing this full time is shockingly blessed with beautiful people and wild
Oh,
opportunities,
good.
and so
Oh, good.
I'm very lucky, and I sometimes scratch my head about how it's played off. With a caveat, it's still wildly challenging, and I'm like, I don't even. It's. I mean, it makes me laugh when I think about how challenging it is, but which makes me think of like, man, if you're not having opportunities, you roll, periodically to remind you that like, hey, this is the right path. You need to be an absolute Spartan to keep going. And a lot of my journey was like this weird and beautiful blossoming from a thing that me and my friends thought would be a fun thing to do, was just host backyard concerts in my at my house here where I live. And we just started inviting artists to come play in our backyard, and because it was fun and because we had a great time, and people come to the backyard, local artists, touring artists, and
It's cool.
yeah, it was just something we really enjoyed, and we did it. We started like 3 years ago, and or more than 3 years ago, I think. Yeah, it must have been more than 3 years. It must be 3.5 years ago or something. And we just haven't stopped. We done them about once a month, um, and before that, I didn't know anybody that was doing music, being a songwriter, doing ours. Hardly anybody. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not lying to you. I was like 26 years old, knowing I was like, I got to do songwriting. But I didn't even know a songwriter. Like, I didn't know one other songwriter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we just did these shows in our backyard, and they started becoming bigger and more songwriters would come and play. And my buddy Will, who would help me do the songwriting or to do the host the shows, he would be like, "Yeah, you got to go up and sing your songs before the show to open up the show." And
Smart.
I was like so reluctant at first. I was like, "This is not like this. We're just doing this for fun. I'm not doing this because I want to share my songs. I'm like, I just want to hang out. But he like forced me to go up there a handful of times. And one of the times, this artist Daniel Rodriguez was playing a show, and it just happened to be that he was on tour with the Lumineers, playing in stadiums, and he kind of said yes to come and play in our backyard. And I played the song Bones, and I had just written a couple weeks before. I had played it live, and so I didn't really know what was going to happen. I'm like, here's a song I wrote, and I played it, and it just connected with a lot of people, and connected with Daniel. And he reached out to me a couple weeks later after their tour was done, and Daniel hit me up and was like, "Hey, do you want to come out to Boulder and record a record with me?" And I was like, "Yes, that would be life changing, because I don't know how I would go about making a record." And I went out to Colorado and recorded a record with this amazing singer songwriter. By the time I was finishing up, I had just gotten out of the Navy, and I was committed to doing this full time. And I was also aware that no one was going to listen to this unless it was like marketed, put out into the world. And
Mm.
I was like, all right, I got to figure out how to be a badass marketer, or is there any other like ways I could try to figure out how to do this? And I was like, oh, there's these singing shows, and maybe I could, if I got on them, then I could like people would listen to this record. And so I went online and looked up singing shows, and The Voice was like one of the top ones, and it was like, you can audition right now, like just do it online. And I was like, oh, well, that's easy. Like if I could,
You just like sing to the computer?
yeah. And so I just did the online
No
audition
way.
process, and multiple steps, but eventually that led me to being on The Voice. And then of course a lot of opportunities blossomed out of that. And so since being out of the Navy, it was just a lot of the beautiful relationships and a lot of opportunities, and to share my music has kind of come from that kind of backyard, and just trying to enjoy music in like a really like kind of rootsy way. And it's been so much challenge in between all that stuff, but I've been very blessed with a lot of like strange opportunities and like beautiful opportunities that, for somebody who didn't know anybody, it seems kind of naive, honestly, thinking back to it, being like, I'm getting out of the Navy and doing this full time. And like, I didn't even know anybody, like I didn't no
Yeah.
idea how to do it. And somehow, it's brought me to here where I feel really grateful because I have the work cut out for me. Like, of course, like I just have so much, the work's unavoidable, but I think the ways to express it in the vehicles now are a little bit more formulated, and so it gives me a little bit more of a structure to kind of express that artistic work in now.
What did it do for you to be around? Because it's not just The Voice. You also won a songwriting competition recently, I
Right?
believe,
Yeah.
to, you know, being in the room, metaphorically and literally, with people who have, quote, made it, or whatever that looks like, having like big exposure nationally on television, all of that stuff. How has that affected the way that you approach the business side to what you're doing? Was it discouraging? Was it exciting? What did you learn from these experiences that maybe you wouldn't have known or understand without them?
Yeah. Being on The Voice was a huge blessing. I mean, I got to work with Michael Bublé and got to sing in front
Yeah.
of celebrities and on national television. And what's cool, honestly, for me, one of the biggest takeaways I did got from that whole thing is that like I think everybody on a certain level holds a belief that like someday someone out there is going to find you, or is going to help you in some sort of way that will change your life, and just change everything. And I think there's an aspect to that
Mm.
that's true. There's always people, and I've had people in my life that have opened doors for me that inarguably has changed my life. But I think that the thing that sometimes gets lost in the thought, and which is once you lose it, you lose everything, is that no no one nobody is going to do the work that you need to do. And sometimes the thought, even just the thought that someday someone's going to come and help you out or save you or like,
Mm.
make you a star or something is really damaging. And I think going to just getting thrown up in, on national television and getting a lot of, I was really lucky. I got a lot of exposure and I got a lot of, like a lot of like support through the process online, from the online community and like and elsewhere. It was like a very positive experience. And despite that, you kind of land where you land is in your real life, doing the real
Yeah.
work. That realization, I think, for me, it's not like I was like I'm going to become a star. Like I was never that like bought into the idea, but
Right.
even just a little thing in the back of your head that's like you're going to make it. Like things are going to be easier for you after you have these
Right.
opportunities. Where in reality, you just land back into your life with the work in front of you of being an artist. And what's great, what's kind of freeing about that is you realize that like, oh, there's no circumstance that can take away that work from me. Like the work is always in front of you. And the only thing that's preventing you from not doing it is you. It is like the belief that maybe
Yeah.
there's something that needs to happen for you to be able to do the work, or that you
Yeah.
need someone to come around and give you an opportunity for you to be able to do the work. Whereas in reality, it's like it's just staring
Yeah.
right in front of you all the time. For me, that was a big
You just spoke
realization.
so much truth, dude.
Sorry, what's that?
So much truth. As you said, you just spoke so much truth. I could feel it in my bones, man. You keep when you say the work, just from a logistical standpoint, because I'm not a musician, I'm not in that world at all. What is the work that you find yourself maybe either avoiding or most people avoid? What is like the tactical work of building a music
Yeah,
career look like? I'm just
yeah,
curious.
yeah. I think it really depends on what type of role you have in the music, you know, journey. I think some people are like more pure musicians and their work is practicing their instrument and becoming a master of their instrument. For me, I try to continue improving on my instrument and my musicality and doing all the things you would imagine somebody doing in a music lesson when you were a kid. But
Yeah.
for me, I'm definitely more of a songwriter, and so I my work is is writing songs and like for example, I'm just gonna grab it. My work kind of lives in right now in this big old thing. Oops, and like this is where I
Wow,
write my
that's
songs. I love
huge.
writing songs on these big pieces of paper, and like for example, like the last song I wrote. This is the work. This is one song, and this
Damn.
is uh maybe like 10 hours, 10, 12 hours or something, working out one song with
Yeah.
multiple excavations and
Yep.
exploring
Yep.
different words and phrases and ideas um and that's one song that maybe will never get recorded, maybe that won't you won't hear. And it took me a full week of multiple hour sessions sitting there
Right.
with that one song. And so,
Right.
if that's, I think, the work of a songwriter. But of course, I don't think everybody in the music industry does that type of work. There are different types of work, but I think it will all kind of look like that. I mean, that's a visual
Yeah.
example of it, but everybody will leave their own little like trace of the work, and you'll probably realize that it's the work because it's beating you up pretty good.
How do you disconnect from people are going to hear this while you're writing? I'm working on a short film right now and it's my first, and it's so weird because I say I want to do this and it's the thing that I just want to, like, I have my notebooks too and I want to punch my notebooks in the face sometimes because I get so frustrated with what I'm trying to say and not saying, being able to say it in the way I want to say it. But then there's this thing in my head where I keep seeing the faces of the people who are going to watch this, and I have to detach from that because I'm allowing, perception or me needing to be liked or approval or whatever, to keep me from actually saying what I want to say. And you're a songwriter and the words are your thing. So I'm curious, like, how do you detach from that?
It's one of those balance things again where I feel like on one end there's this, for me, the art creation process, writing songs, one end is like fully me, for me on one end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum, it's fully for the art, for the audience. And somewhere in the middle
Yeah.
is this holding both in tension at the same time, and realizing that this process is healing and life-giving for myself, but unavoidably I'm doing it also for an audience, because if I wasn't, I would make these things and be 100% content with just having that scribble
Yeah.
sit in my room for the rest of my
Yeah.
life and then be lost in time. And I think the
Yeah.
reality of most creators is that that's not true, probably almost everybody. And so then there's this realization that you are doing it for an audience and you are also
Yeah.
doing it for yourself, and they're both true. That's okay, I think. And they actually keep each other honest and keep each other
Hmm.
accountable. And a lot of times I'll be writing something that they need to, for me, a lot of times they'll need to check both boxes. They'll be like, did this really matter to me? Like, and for me in songwriting, I'll know it matters because it will either make me cry or it will make me laugh. It will be like a natural, like it will just happen. And then I'm like in this moment and I'm just becoming aware that, oh my gosh, I'm like laughing out loud, or I'm crying now. And when that happens, I know I've struck something that matters to me. For me, then that's where the work usually happens of like, okay, how can I take this thing that is true and take all the craft of whatever it is for songwriting, to take that feeling and that real thing and and form it in a way that will be communicated to that audience that I want to share this feeling with and
Mm.
be understood. Because for me, I like art. One of the main things is that like is communication, communication of emotions,
Yeah.
and if you feel something, come across something in the artistic process where you learn something about yourself, a new feeling or a new a new way of seeing the world, that's for you. But as an artist, the work is to take what you feel and give it to somebody else, a gift. And between
Mm.
that gift being given and received and what you just experienced is like the work of a craftsman. And I think
Wow.
taking that into account of like, I am doing it for other people. And if people, if I do the work right and I want to give this feeling or this way of seeing or this way of being aware or awake to somebody else, I'm going to have to do this really well. Like you kind of, it's kind of Trojan horse a lot of things, you know, you have to
Yeah.
disguise it as one thing.
Let's get dark.
Okay. I love dark.
Just real quick.
I have a
Let's
song
just get
called
dark.
Into the Dark. So this is perfect.
Let's go. Let's go. Um, Morality, regret, bones. I wanted to go here with you real quick because, as dramatic as it sounds, I believe it's true. I use the word calling a lot too, and I always pay attention when people use that word because that's a very heavy word.
Yeah.
It's a very spiritual word, and it says a lot. Like there's stuff behind that word.
Mm-hmm.
There's this weird ass. I don't even know what to call it. Like grave thing in Rome where these, sharing this with the audience for those who don't know, I forgot what it's called, but it's like these Franciscan monks all died and they made this big art piece with their bones in Rome. And you can go look at it, which is the weirdest thing. We were in Rome a couple of weeks ago and my daughters are like, hell yeah, bones. Like they were so excited, you know, and I'm just like walking through there as like this, you know, grown woman thinking, God, this is dark. This is,
Yeah.
you know, I can't believe they did this. And I didn't know that one of your songs is actually written after that place that I just visited. And I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about that because it's a very fun, light song from like a musical standpoint, but then with the context of why you wrote it and what it actually means to you, I think it kind of wraps up this idea of calling in a beautiful way, ironically. Messy question for you, or I guess intro to this conversation, but I just wanted you to share, what you experienced as a little boy and then why you wrote this song, Bones.
Yeah, I was on a family trip to Rome.
How old were
Um,
you?
I think I was maybe in seventh grade or something. So I was
Okay.
like,
So you're my daughter's age. That
yeah,
just
I was like
occurred.
old
Yeah.
enough to
Yeah.
yeah, you're kind of you're a full person at that age. You're like, and we just went into the church as a family, and it's funny, like I don't actually remember it that much. It's not like something it did like that was an experience that happened when I was a kid, going and seeing that church and that crypt and seeing that those bones on the wall, and there's a sign that says what you are, we used to be, what we are, you will be, on that, above all those bones. And I think probably had a normal experience of that. It's just, I mean, it's pretty shocking. It's like, wow, that's really reflective, and it demands you to reflect on your mortality. But I'm a kid, and I go about my life as a kid. And then in like 2000, yeah, a couple years ago, 2022, 21, um, my mom got diagnosed with fourth stage lung cancer and passed away shortly after. And trying to come to reality, kind of grips with the reality of death in not like some sort of like philosophical way, or some sort of like um, some sort of, oh, that's something that's fun to talk about on Halloween, and then something that won't ever happen to me. I think the highest delusion that we live in, of course, no one will admit from it, intellectual, logical argument, like, do you think you're going to die? Of course, everybody's going to say, yeah, of course. But from an emotional, spiritual, like integrated believing, I think a lot of people don't believe that they're going to die,
Right.
or that the people that they love are going to die. And I definitely was in that ballpark, and I think probably everybody lives in that world before they see a death, and it's real, it's in reality. And so when I was going through that experience, I was like, for some reason, that memory as a kid and those bones was like triggered, and that song just came out from that, like. And I actually said those in in that song. I said those words, and I didn't even know. I'm like, those are familiar words. I don't really remember. It's like just a memory of like
Wow.
what those words are. And then I remembered the whole church and the bones and everything came back. And um, it's really, really a wild and mysterious thing, because that song, it's a song about death and um, kind of darker things, but it's in a very real way. This is not some like fluffy way. That song has changed my life and set me on my path as my journey as being a singer songwriter, and it led me to recording my first record, Bones, and it led me onto the national television on The Voice, and it's basically put me on my path in this journey of being an artist and
Mm.
a singer songwriter. And so it's been such a big gift, and for me, that's a beautiful kind of like metaphor of how life is. Like the from the suffering and from loss and from tragedy is gives birth to new beginnings, and to beauty, and to opportunities and gifts to other people. And yeah, so that was kind of the story of that song, and it continues to change my life in weird ways. Like, yeah, just a couple weeks ago, I found out that it won the best Americana song in the American Songwriter song competition for 2024. So
Which is
it's just
awesome.
yeah, it's been a mysterious song, has mysteriously opened a lot of
Mm.
doors for me, and it's been a huge gift. Yeah.
One last deep ass question, then I'll get you out of here.
I love
You
deep
said it.
ass.
You said at the very beginning when you were talking about being a little boy, you said, quote, I saw the world differently. And I wanted to end here with what you've experienced, allowing these songs to come through you, where you're at in your life right now. I'm just curious, how do you see the world?
Yeah.
How do you wrestle with calling and what that means? Why God, source, whoever put you on this path and has led you to this work? How do you see the world and your role in it right now?
I think that the most dangerous belief in this is like in spirituality, in business, in relationships, in everything. The most dangerous belief is that you have it figured out, or like you know what's going on, or
Yeah.
you you're convinced that you know what's going on. Like in business, obviously, like if you're just gonna like I know who my audience is, or like I know, like if you just
Mhm.
say these things and you're just like you're really rigid about it, you go out of business, like because that's not how it works. Reality will come and humble you. And I think that's the same in relationships. You're like, I know who my partner is, or like I know, just if you're just like I know how things are and I
Mm.
know what, it's just so dangerous. And I think the same thing is in art and in our own personal journeys and in our relationship with God. And so for me, I think I try to maintain a spirit of like mystery and in not some sort of
Yeah.
like kind of like weird woo woo way, but like I try to be like just real about it. It's like I don't
Yeah.
know basically anything, and to pretend like I do is dangerous. It's dangerous,
Yeah.
and it takes you away from being grounded in reality. And so for me, I just try to always see things in that manner, and then with that reality, with that realization, to try to take the most grounded step forward in the
Mm.
journey. And yeah, I think that that framework for me, I think follows in most of my activities. And it's one of my favorite historical characters is Benjamin Franklin. I grew up in Philadelphia, and so Benjamin Franklin's he's the man in Philadelphia, and he's kind of like the man in the United States. He's one of the most important people in the founding of the United States, and wildly, it's not, I just mar. He's just so wild that he like discovered electricity, and
Yeah.
like kind of was one of the most important people in the founding of the United States. Just did so many things. It's bonkers. But he had this group called the Junto, and they would meet, and there were just like people in Philadelphia that um, he was like, hey, I think these people want to be civil servants and want to improve the
Mm.
city. And so he got together these group of people, and they would just talk about various things. It was kind of like just a group to try to improve themselves in the world they were living in. And they had a rule that I like just masterful. The rule in the group was that you can't say anything that isn't true as if it is. And
Mm.
like for me, that I think we all do that all the time. We say things that like, it's, the economy's horrible. It's like, it's just say it as if it is, with like, to frame that as it seems like the economy's horrible is
Yeah.
day and night, or like my relation, my partner is absolutely just the worst because of
Yeah.
blah blah blah. It's like it seems like my partner is the worst. Like even
Yeah.
if you believe that to be true at that moment, the difference between hey, it seems like that is from my where I'm standing
Yeah.
right now is day and night between it is, because as soon as you've sold yourself an idea. You made yourself a prisoner to it, and
Yeah.
it's not easy to do. If you were to record
Yeah.
yourself going around the day, and then
Yeah.
look back at it and see how many times you've said something in an absolute way,
Yeah.
it'd probably be a lot more than you probably would like to admit. And for me too, for me, that's an important thing to try to take with me as I navigate life. I don't know if I answered that question, but it was a pretty loaded
It
question, and
was,
so
I freaking love that answer. I've been on a kick lately where, because I grew up evangelical Christian, I was in ministry for a long, long time, and I was the most black and white asshole person that you've ever met. I was horrible, very judgmental, very rigid. Um, and then through my own breaking point and rediscovering God and really trying to figure out who I am, the answer I've concluded to so far, we'll see next week where it's at, is just that God is mystery and that there is
yeah,
so, and it's such a beautiful, fun, interesting, fulfilling, life giving way to live life is saying, I don't know more often than you say I know,
yeah,
which is crazy.
it's crazy.
It's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
Yeah. But
it's
anyway,
surrounding
I could talk
natural.
to you all day. I've already taken too much of your time. I want to make sure I make a space here for you to share how people can connect with you. And I want to thank you. You didn't have to say yes to this. Um, and then the work that you're doing is so beautiful. I told you, we play your music in our house. I listen to it when I write on Fridays at a coffee shop every
Oh,
Friday. And it's so um, rich and meaningful. I love the sound of it. Like I told you in the DM, that your lyrics are just freaking beautiful. So I'm thrilled
thanks.
that you got to come on. Thank you for doing
Yeah,
this.
thank you so
How
much.
can we support your work? What's next that you're excited about?
Yeah. Um, Thanks so much for having me. This was a delight. I love talking about the creative world and trying to navigate this crazy thing we're all doing here. So it's a real honor, and honestly, it's helpful for me because thoughts, they get jumbled up in your head,
Yeah.
and to be able to
Yeah.
express them is a gift. So thank you so much. And yeah, I'm an independent singer songwriter, so it's full on artist, full on entrepreneur, and trying to
Yeah.
figure out how to make those things dance. And um, so yeah, you can head over to markshiiba.com is where all my stuff is, and I have all my work up there, and then I kind of have I just want to I just want to real quick circle back to what you were saying about how we're living in an age that's like getting turned upside down from the creative world. Is that like right? Is
Yeah.
that what you were
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit naive to it because I'm coming in just 3 years ago into this being like gunslinging, like, let's go, and it's been quick learning and trying to stay light on my feet and try to figure out like how does this work
Mhm.
now,
Mhm.
and how do we make this sustainable and life giving and honest, and basically I've come to the conclusion that it's like the algorithm is not a place where you want to cultivate, and I think we've all been in a place where
Preach.
we 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 still believe that like the algorithm is where we cultivate, and it's not that the algorithm is where we reach from like a technical, I guess, marketing standpoint, is like that's where we go and find people that might enjoy what you're doing, and
Right.
the honest communication though in the cultivating of relationships and the giving aspect of the creative journey and is in is outside of the algorithm, and so for
So
me that
good.
was on my
That's
website,
good.
and I created a community called Shiiba Village, which is like a Patreon type of structure where
Mhm.
people can give $5, and then I give there. That's where I give my work and um, share the journey of what I'm doing. And for me, once I kind of had that realization, it changed everything, and realized that that's the vehicle that I want to express what I'm doing. And
Yeah.
of course, you're still obligated as a business to engage in the social media and
Right.
be really smart and thoughtful about all that, and to put music out on the streaming platforms, and they all have their advantages and disadvantages of every single one, but in terms of cultivating community, in which I think is one of the is is the heart of music. And so where I'm doing that is on my website. It's a community called Shiiba Village, and I launched it right at the beginning of the year, and that's kind of where everything's going down.
Oh,
And
yeah.
if you want to just find my music and just listen to it, you can also do it just anywhere you listen to music. And
All of
yeah,
that will be linked in the show notes. Y'all need to do it. I'll tell you what, this man is gifted, and I know you will not regret it. Last question, we'll get you out of here. What is something in your life you are deeply questioning right now that you do not have the answer to? It can be something deep, or it could be something really silly. I don't care, but what's been on your mind lately that you have a big question mark around?
I don't know. This might not be a big. There are bigger things to contemplate, I think. But one of the big things I've been questioning, in trying to explore and investigate, is more about like human psychology in a more objective way, and not so much as a. I think some people maybe people perceive it as manipulation or like you know
Mm.
marketing, all these things that come across as negatively connotated. But yeah, I'm just exploring human psychology and why humans do things that they do. Why do they take the actions that they take? Why do they think the way they think? How do people get manipulated? What are the mechanisms for people to make decisions? And
Mm.
just trying to understand that and be a little bit more. I'm just curious about that. Of course, as a marketer, that's like, that's you need to know that to do your job well. But it also having, I think, understanding in human psychology allows you to be more generous when you interact with people and to have more understanding. And I think it's just a really useful tool for navigating life and relationship and business and art and all that stuff. And so it's currently a topic of inspection.
Well, if you figure it out, you holla at me and let me know because
Uh,
it's a big ass
oh
question.
man, I don't think I'll ever do that. But I did. I saw that you had Seth Godin on
Yeah,
your podcast, which is it's just fun. I have. Is this his?
unreal.
Oh yeah, like I literally have his book right here. Yeah.
Let's go. He's so, what was such a joy. And this has been my experience more than not. I've interviewed a lot of people, most people, yourself included. It's such a joy to like read their books, hear their songs, follow them, and then actually interact with them and know that they're just a freaking awesome human being. And
Yeah,
Seth
that's
was
amazing.
like that. He was so nice and kind and generous, and he didn't
Yeah,
have to be.
yeah,
I was a little podcaster, but he was so great.
that's
So
beautiful. Another person that
yeah.
I just saw that you had was Matthew Dix. And
Yep.
Matthew Dix is somebody my sister had his book sitting on her kitchen or something, and it's
Brilliant guy.
something stories something, and then I at the time I was really getting interested in storytelling at my shows, and I tell stories at my shows, and I was like, oh, what is this? Can I read this? It seems like probably applicable to what I'm doing right now, and I was like really blown away by uh, everything he's doing.
It's one of the best. I have it. Oh my gosh, look. I have it right here. Storyworthy.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, one of the best books on storytelling I've ever read. But anyway, I could talk to you.
Yeah,
It was such a joy. Thanks so much for coming on.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks
All
so
right.
much, Heather.